Well, after an unexpected 2-week break, we are back with our first of 2 reviews this April. And what better way to start than with a freaking Nick Cage movie, as today, at the Channel Point's request of Quaid, we're going to review Vampire's Kiss, which was released in 1989. Vampire's Kiss is a black comedy horror film directed by Robert Byerman and written by Joseph Minion. The movie centers around Peter Lowe, who is slowly going insane and hallucinates that he's becoming a vampire. As previously stated, the role of Peter Lowe was played by Nicolas Cage, however, it was originally supposed to be played by Dennis Quaid. Quaid then passed it on to Cage, though, to do Inner Space, which ended up winning an Oscar for Best Visual Effects. Also starring in the movie were Maria Alonso, Elizabeth Ashley, and Jennifer Beals. Apparently, Cage and Beals did not get along, because the role that Beals got, he originally wanted to go to his then-girlfriend and future wife, Patricia Arquette. The film received negative reviews from critics and was a massive box office failure. On a budget of $2 million, it made back about $725,000. However, since then, this has become a cult classic film, mainly because of Cage's complete over-the-top acting during this. Like seriously, this is Nick Cage at his Nick Cageiest, and while it seems that critics hated it, a lot of people who have seen it since seem to love it. There's also many memes that have come from this film. If you've ever seen the meme of Nicolas Cage smiling maniacally with his eyes wide open, yeah, that came from this. But just how crazy did Nick get? Well, we're gonna find out right now as we review Vampire's Kiss, released in 1989. So our film begins with Peter Lowe, a literary agent and stereotypical yuppie. Peter meets a girl named Jackie at a club and takes her back to his place to have sex. While they're trying to do so, however, they're interrupted by a bat. The next day at his work, Peter is for whatever reason a massive dick to a secretary named Alva and asks her to find a lost contract. Peter then talks to his therapist about his troubles, and hey, remember that incident with the bat? Yeah, he tells his therapist that apparently chasing that bat made him horny, which is totally not weird. Peter then once again goes out to a club and meets another girl, this time named Rachel, and once again they go back to his place to have sex, only this time Rachel bites his neck. The next morning, Peter is having a conversation with Rachel, who appears to not exist. He then goes to an art museum with Jackie the next day and promptly ditches her. She's obviously furious and leaves an angry voicemail on his phone telling him that she never wants to see him ever again. The next day at work, Peter continues to berate Alva over the contract she still hasn't found and even calls the guy who wants the contract, and over the phone, he's like, oh yeah, I don't really need it, but Peter lies to continue to get on Alva. Peter then starts to have some massive mood swings, lashing out at a diner and then calling Jackie to apologize and asks her to come to a bar around 9. As he's about to leave to go to the bar, he ends up getting dragged back into his apartment by Rachel, and Jackie is pissed once again. The next day at work, in a fucking hilarious scene, this is my favorite scene of the whole movie, he yells at Alva and chases her out the halls into the women's bathroom before apologizing. He then goes home to see that Jackie left a note on his door telling him to stay out of her life, and he throws a fit and destroys his entire apartment. He then talks to his therapist the next day and continues to throw an even bigger fit over that lost contract. Back at work, he feigns an apology to Alva, but then tells her that she's the lowest of the low, and she's not allowed to do anything else until she finds the contract. Peter then spends another night with Rachel, who once again drinks his blood, and then once again during the morning, she is shown to be imaginary. The next day at work, Peter finds that Alva is called out sick, so naturally he gets her address and goes to her house. He once again apologizes to her, telling her the contract doesn't matter, but as soon as they get in a taxi, he relents on that and screams at her again. They make a stop so Alva can visit her brother Emilio, and convinces Emilio to give her some blank bullets for her gun. Back at work, Alva continues to search for the contract while Peter uses the bathroom and convinces himself that he can't see himself in the mirror, and he's like, oh my god, I've fully turned into a vampire. Alva finally finds the contract, but Peter opens the door and he's like, oh, too late, and starts chasing her again. He eventually corners Alva and demands that she shoot him, not knowing that her gun is full of blanks. When she fails to, he rips her shirt open and throws her to the ground and attempts to bite her neck. He then attempts to shoot himself twice with the blanks, but it does nothing, convincing him that his transformation is complete and he's now immortal. Peter then goes home and destroys what's left of his apartment, while the next day, Alva wakes up distraught, thinking that she's been raped. Peter then buys some plastic vampire teeth and calls his therapist, desperate to make another appointment. He then kidnaps a bird from the park and takes it home and eats it. That night, fake teeth and all, he goes to a nightclub where he punches his way in. He meets a lady sitting all by herself and starts to hit on her, however he gets way too touchy and she slaps him multiple times, so he takes a chunk out of her neck. He then sees Rachel again, who promptly spits on him and tells him that they're through and that she has another date. He then wanders onto the dance floor and sees the real Rachel and her date, who seems to recognize him. After he's kicked out of the club, it's revealed through his ramblings that Rachel is apparently somebody who he knew in high school and probably had a crush on, which is why he was fantasizing her the whole time. The next day, Alva goes to her brother Emilio and finally tells him what happened. Peter meanwhile wanders the street and tries to get some homeless people to pierce him with a stake. And also apparently these were real homeless people and they were probably scared out of their fucking mind. Peter then starts to imagine a conversation with his therapist where he tells her that he doesn't need her services anymore as he just wants to find love. The therapist then sets him up with an imaginary lady named Sharon who just happens to like all the same things that he does. He goes back into his apartment talking to the imaginary Sharon while Emilio, who's waiting outside, follows him in. His argument with Sharon has gone completely off the rails and pretty much breaks up with her while he goes to sleep in his coffin bed. Emilio then arrives to confront him and Peter arranges the stake for him to pierce him with, and Emilio obliges. And as Peter dies, he imagines vampiress Rachel one last time. So yeah, this might be Nick Cage's craziest role ever, but I actually liked it, and I can understand why people like it as well, and I'm gonna tell you why. So aside from it just being hilarious, and it is, this movie is funny as hell. Like, it's a legitimate comedy. It is a hilarious movie. Whether it was intentional or not, and I don't know if it was, you never know of Nick Cage, he did a perfect job, in my opinion, of portraying a completely insane person. Like Peter Lowe, the whole point of the character was he was supposed to be completely insane. And if that's what they were going for, I mean, Cage knocked it out of the park because he was completely insane. And I can understand why people didn't like it because it might seem like he was hamming it up. And again, maybe he was. Maybe he wasn't doing it on purpose. But regardless of whether he was or not, it worked. And honestly, I wouldn't call this a good movie or a bad movie. I'd just call this a hilariously insane movie. And would I recommend you watch it? Abso-fucking-lutely. It is well worth your time. It's about an hour 40, about 100 minutes, but trust me, it is worth your time. So thank you, Quaid, for using your points on this, and I forgive you for making me watch Birdemic 2. That is, of course, until you make me watch Birdemic 3. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to do it for my review of Vampire's Kiss. We'll be back here next week with one of the Carry On films, Carry On Screaming. That ought to be fun, but that's going to do it for me today. Thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, be sure to leave it a like. If you want to follow any of my social media links, they're all in the description down below. Thank you to all my patrons named in the description for supporting me and all my channels. I appreciate you guys. With all that being said, though, my name is Noah Taff. This has been my review of Vampire's Kiss, released in 1989, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.